Hello, thank you for joining our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Matthew. Today we are starting chapter 2. We're going to do verse 1 through 12. So go ahead, open up your Bibles, and take a look and read what we're going to be talking about today. I don't have time to really read these scriptures these days because we're going through these big portions and there's a lot to say. So I'm depending on you to go ahead and open up your Bibles and look at the passages we're looking at so that you can see what we're doing. Today we're looking at chapter 2, verse 1 through 12. And in there we see the narrative of Jesus' birth. There's two of them in the Bible. One's in Matthew, one's in Luke. They tell very different narratives. And in Matthew, we read the narrative of the Magi. Now, who are Magi? Magi are astrologers. They are Chaldeans, sometimes they're called. They were priests to the king. They were counselors to the kings. We sometimes call them wise men. The one thing they're not is kings. So when we read about we three kings of Orient, that's not correct biblically. But they are these other things. They are astrologers, wise men, and they were counselors to the king. Now, these wise men, these magi, come from the east, probably from Persia or Babylon. We read about them in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 2, and we can see how the king would ask them for counseling, for advice. So that's who the Magi are. Now, these Magi come from the east. Now, notice that oftentimes it says the star is in the east, but it doesn't mean that the star is in the east. It means they saw the star while they were in the east. So the star was actually in the west for them as they traveled from the east to the west, but they were in the east. And as they come from Persia, Babylon, coming into Jerusalem, they're following a star. And the star goes away, disappears on them. They go to the capital of Judea, of Israel, and they go to where the king is in Jerusalem. And so that's where we pick up the story. They're in Jerusalem looking for the king that was born based on the star. Now, where'd they get that idea? Well, being there from Persia and Babylon, remember that back in the day, the Israelites were taken out of Israel and they were brought into Babylon and then Persia. And while they were there, they had their scriptures. And so, of course, the Persians and the Magi specifically, who were the wise men, they would have been the learned ones, they would have known the Hebrew scriptures and the prophecies of the coming Messiah. They would have also known Balaam's prophecies, because Balaam was from a secular Gentile, if you would, and they would have known him. He was a very famous prophet, kind of like Nostradamus today. He was a very famous prophet, and they would have known his prophecies, and they would have known that he spoke about the Jewish star that would have a scepter. And so we read about that in Numbers chapter 24. So they would have known these things, and they look up in the star. They're astrologers. They look up in the star, and they see this star. And in the sky, they see this star. And it's not a star like we think of. We think of this big, bright star, the star of Bethlehem, this huge star that nobody could miss. You could see it from miles and miles away. If that was true, then we wouldn't have the conversation that Herod has with them, which is, when did you see the star? What star are you talking about? So this is a star that experts would see. They, as expert stargazers, would know there's something different here. It was miraculous to them. They knew it was not just something new. They knew it was something different. And they connected it to these prophecies of the Jewish Messiah. So they come down to Israel. They're looking for this Jesus. They don't know he's Jesus. They're looking for this Messiah, this newborn king. They lose the star. They speak to Herod. Herod is frightened because Herod isn't actually a Jewish king. He was placed there. He's actually Idumean. He's only part Jewish. But he doesn't have any line of David. He doesn't have any kingly line in him. He got his position through politics and through treachery. And so he's now the king, and he's afraid that now he's going to lose his throne to the true king, so he wants to get rid of him. So he goes to the scribes. The scribes are the experts at the law, at the scriptures. And he says, where's this Messiah supposed to be born? And they rightly go back to Micah chapter 2, and they say, in Bethlehem. So Herod sends the wise men to Bethlehem and says, when you get there, find out where he is, come back, let me know, because I want to go worship him. Now, he doesn't really want to worship him. He wants to kill him because he wants to protect his throne. But the wise men don't know that. So the Magi go down into Bethlehem, and the star reappears. So you can actually follow the star to the house, which is kind of weird because you can't really follow a star to a house. Think about that, right? But this star was a miraculous star. Some people think it was an angel, but it wouldn't have been an angel. These are experts in stars. They know the difference between an angel and a star. So they follow the star to the house, and notice it's a house, it's not a stable. Recognize it's probably 2 years after Jesus is born, because later on we're going to see that Herod wants to kill all the 2-year-olds and younger. He gets that from the Magi. We'll talk about that next time. But they go to the house, they see Jesus, and they worship him. And they give him gold and frankincense and myrrh. And here, Matthew once again is showing the inclusion of the Gentiles. So these guys are Babylonians or Persians. They're not Jewish, but yet they come to worship Jesus. And Matthew's pointing out Jesus is for everyone, not just for the Jews, but for all people. And they bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. That stands for Jesus as king, Jesus as priest, and Jesus as prophet. And so here we see that picture of the Magi coming from a far distance, coming to visit the promised Messiah. We'll continue with this story next time. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and God bless you.